am back, sort of, here to talk once again about the behind the scenes of Silent Hill, the making of. This is going to be a kind of addition to the making of Silent Hill 2 video. I'm really not up to making a third update to that video right now, so I thought I'd do a little more relaxed kind of discussion of some new information that's come out about how the second Silent Hill game was made. More about my personal situation and health and stuff. I'll update all that at the end. When Silent Hill 2 Remake was announced, one of the things I discussed as a positive was the idea that we'll probably get more information about the original game and more discussion about it. And I was right, in a really big way. The director of Silent Hill 2, Tsuboyama Masashi, has come out of hiding, in a sense. He wasn't really hiding, but he hadn't been around for a while. And with the remake out, once it had actually released, Tsuboyama-san actually came out on Twitter and started talking about it. And a lot of folks noticed. There were tons of articles written about it. He and Ito talked back and forth. I think Yamaoka-san might have also gotten in on it. And they chatted, and he kind of came and said, hey, I really love the remake. Here's what I think about it. I think he had some critiques, but for the most part, he seemed to really enjoy the kind of modern take on his game. Then has since, in the months after, discussed the making of the game and some of the details from his personal experiences. Now, Silent Hill 2's director role is really kind of interesting. To my knowledge, my memory of the situation, it was kind of up in the air. If you look at articles and interviews from the time, two different people, are named the director. Imamura Akihiro, who would eventually be producer, and Tsuboyama Masashi would be eventually director. He started as art director, became director. Imamura had been director, became producer. Essentially, reading behind-the-scenes information, it seems like as the project got bigger, the roles kind of shifted, and Tsuboyama took over more on the home team. Imamura-san was more in charge of advertising, the big stuff like that. And for that reason, it's a little weird when looking back in the history to find out, who is the director. It was Tsuboyama-san, which is very strange in the sense that a lot of big figures in Silent Hill we know a decent amount about, but Tsuboyama-san has been kind of ghosting, just not really as much. Toyama-san, pretty active online. Sato-san was pretty active for a while, a lot of interviews. Ito-san, Yamaoka-san, but Tsuboyama-san, not much. He is probably still at Good Feel Inc. Very recently, a tweet from a Japanese company came up discussing a member of Good Feel Inc. had come to lecture at their company, and lo and behold, it was Tsuboyama-san, so he must still be there, as very recently. And he still seems to be working in video games. He was art manager or director on the new Princess Peach game, which I thought was a really lovely project, kind of highlighting the history of Japanese female theater traditions and theatrical ideas in video games, which was really neat. It was very well implemented. Highly recommend checking that out. So I have here a document listing, as far as I've listed so far, all the tweets from various members of Silent Hill teams over the years. It is nowhere near complete. It is mostly just 3 or 4 people right now. One day, I hope to make it everything I can find. But we're going to go over Tsuboyama Masashi's tweets and discuss some of the things that he talks about in the making of Silent Hill 2. There's a purpose in starting the game in the toilets. Creating the everyday emphasizes the extraordinary. Reality does not mean photorealism. Very cool. When he's talking about the remake of Silent Hill 2, he talks a lot about the camera, and actually mentions that he was pretty dissatisfied with the original game's camera. They had to use different angles and restrictions because they were limited by how much the game could process. Even though that's now, one of the most poignant and well-loved pieces of the original game. Kind of goes into how, restrictions often inform how art is made and then give it its quality. But at the same time, I agree with Tsuboyama-san. It's also really cool to be able to see an over-the-shoulder view that adds to the sense of realism and immersion. I agree. I like both versions. One is far more surreal and strange. The other feels a little more potent because it feels like I am more identified with James. In Silent Hill 2, Tsuboyama-san says he sometimes was doing direction, camera work, design, and modeling it all by himself. We design with James' feelings and the message he wants to convey to the players. That's the observation deck. Welcome is a message from Silent Hill and me. So I'm getting the impression that he actually made the original, observation deck, the bathroom. That's very cool. By coincidence, a friend of mine recommended the movie Lost Highway, which inspired me to create the characters of two similar yet different beings. They are Mary and Maria. So the original concept of those characters came from Tsuboyama-san? Maybe he recommended Lost Highway to the team because that movie is obviously, it is throughout the game. Another lovely David Lynch film. R.I.P. Maria brings a unique depth to the story, expressing James's complex emotions. Her presence plays a key role in constructing the story. She has a major impact. I definitely agree with that. Her transience means her existence is deeply connected to James's truth. He's destined to complete the story with the player. In the Xbox version, I wanted to use Maria's transience as a theme. Yeah, he's also listed as the director of the original Xbox version. I get the implication that he actually worked with that team. Sometimes it's a different director, but I think this time it was him. For me, Silent Hill was a thing of the past, and I never spoke about it, but after seeing the remake, I was so excited I couldn't keep quiet. How awesome is that? See, that's the thing. Remakes reinvigorate. They bring it to the foreground again. I've had arguments with folks lately. There's still some folks that are just like, won't even look at it, won't even touch it, give it a second. Like, they just hate the idea of remakes in games in general, as a principle. And I guess, whatever, you do you, but how can you be upset at the excitement of the original director being so happy that his game is in the news again? That's so cool. He comes back to talking about the camera, kind of, I think, clarifying what he was saying in earlier tweets. He was mainly talking about the camera during playable mode. So specifically during cutscenes and movie scenes, the camera was basically what they wanted, is the impression I'm getting, but moving around, they were more restricted in how they could have the camera follow James. The OG camera was a case of doing what needed to be done within limitation. There were a number of challenges, including rendering limitations, switching behavior, and camera motion sickness. It was particularly difficult in small spaces. The camera, called a door camera, was set up above James as he passed through the door and then tracked him seamlessly. There were also rail cameras, box cameras, etc. That's interesting. There's actually, I'll have to post a link in the below. There's a YouTuber, maybe, who has done some breaking into the kind of programming Silent Hill 2, and I think has shown some of the ways the cameras work. And it's neat to actually hear, like, the name. Like, it's obvious, like, door camera must be door frame, rail moves along a line, box cameras, that, I don't know, maybe a box scene, I don't know. When making such efforts, I made individual adjustments to each situation, the way the situations presented importance, so I often directly edited the data for intentional camera shots. So a lot of the scenes were specifically framed by Tsuboyama-san, which is really neat. It allows for intentional direction without interrupting players' action, so it's possible to create different images. Another benefit's cost reduction. Once cameras decided, the parts not to be made are also decided. For important locations, I controlled all the data such as direction, intention, background data, camera lighting, etc. Observation deck is one such example. So he was basically the, like, fully in control of the observation jet. In control of a lot of it, it seems like. Camera also affects the data structure. At first, the observation deck, there's a lake in the distance, but by deciding on the camera, I could create it using flat polygons. So basically saying, once they knew where the camera was going to be, they could create the illusion of a lake in the distance with just a flat photograph. Because the camera never turns. You never see the flatness. Yeah. So that was his trick, too. I wonder if that means it's his picture, because that's a picture of a lake in England somewhere? He talks about traveling for the games, but I don't think they went to England unless it was a stopover. I have a feeling maybe it's just an image they found online or something. 2001? They had the internet, right? Of course, there were first-person and TPS options in 2001, but we couldn't guarantee the quality of the graphics, and we didn't have the time to create action. Back then, we manually set the LOD in drawing order, which UE and Unity would handle internally. Technology people will understand what that means. I don't. As freedom increases, it's important to think about what you want to achieve. It's essential for game creators to understand the characteristics of the camera. Find a camera suited to your genre, playstyle, production, situation, and action. That makes sense. I think ultimately it really worked for the original game. Are there pieces of the game I wish I could see better? Sure. But now, like, we have mods, and you can actually mod and play the game in first person, which I think it'll be fascinating to see what shortcuts that reveals. It says so much about how the game is made. I think it's more fun just from a artistic perspective rather than a gameplay perspective. Like, as a game player, I don't know that it adds or takes away from the experience, but as someone who wants to, like, dive deeper into the art itself, seeing the secrets of how the art is made, like the boundary break, you know, those videos. It's really cool. At Silent Hill 2 OG, we watched hundreds of movies and promotional videos a year. Hundreds. We were always thinking about how we could effectively use the creativity, direction, atmosphere, everything we saw in the game. The influences range from concrete to conceptual. And he mentions two references, Chris Cunningham and a specific video, Portishead, Only You, and the movie The Shining, specifically the first scene. The change in scenery expresses distance. We see the hotel is an isolated location, far from civilization. Obviously, the first opening of the game, the very long walk, that's kind of pulling on The Shining, which is cool. And the fact that there's a hotel, you know, I think it's already been mentioned that the hotel in The Shining is similar to the hotel in the game. Another was the Winchester Mystery House. The mental state of the owners reflected in the structure. The house had lost its function. I learned the English word spooky. I visited the site with Mr. Owaku and Mr. Ito. It was a unique trip. So they had a trip to California. We knew that they visited San Bruno, I believe, because of the pictures and how closely the game looks to San Bruno. And they went to an apartment of a team member during that trip. Now we can also confirm they were probably the same trip. They went to the Winchester Mystery House. I'd love to hear more about the trips. It's so neat to think about, like, the way that different cities in America have so influenced the game. Like, Toyama-san went to Atlanta and Chicago, and then the second game they went to, I guess, San Bruno and San Francisco. It's cool to think of the different things they blended together. Silent Hill was a special place for the developers as well. The fact members with such diverse personalities and high skills were able to come together in that place at that time can be called a miracle. You could say Silent Hill 2 was born not through the efforts of individuals, but their fusion. The work reflects the uniqueness of the original Silent Hill 2 team. And it was completed in just 2.5 years. I was dying before the master went up. Oh man. So 2.5 years. I think I guessed that about right. First game in 1999, so they start like almost as soon as Sato-san, I think he went to America very early that year, so 99, 2000, and then to the summer of 2001, and it comes out that October, late fall. Yeah, I think that's about right from what I was guessing. While graphics tend to get all the attention, Silent Hill 2's graphics wouldn't be the same without talented programmers building a graphics engine with a tight development time frame. And that is, Ito-san's talked about him. He's talked a lot about the Silent Hill 2 program. The engine was built from scratch by a team member, and they used it for 2 and 3. Neither UE nor Unity existed back then. Wait, but he referenced UE and Unity back then, didn't he? Maybe he's talking about a specific element of those programs. I don't know enough about how these work to be able to understand that. The stronger the skeleton, the more freedom there is to add. We spent a lot of time building the framework. Several of us had repeated discussions about the concept, the overall picture, and how the game will progress. Mr. Owaku and Mr. Ito are also members who worked together on the framework from scratch. We basically knew that, but it's neat to hear him remember who specifically was working on what. Others had to have been Imamura because he seems to have started as director and then later kind of shifted away. And then Sato was heavily involved but was also across the sea, so that may be why he's mentioning specifically Owaku and Ito, because those three may have been the ones that were like closest. The heart of 2 may have been Owaku, Ito, and Tsuboyama, with Sato-san, Yamaoka-san, Imamura-san a little more distant but still heavily involved. The only thing I regret is we were so busy on location we weren't able to take part in the promotions. There was no social media back then. Core members were hardly able to get the word out. I really wanted to go on overseas promotion. That's funny because it seems like that game had a decent amount of promotions. They had a lot of interviews, a couple at Konami, there was one I think in London, and Tsuboyama-san was involved in a few of them, but he definitely wasn't involved in the biggest things. The promotion in France, the big like weird gun game and the mansion in the middle of nowhere, I don't think Tsuboyama-san was there. So it may have been that he was only involved in stuff maybe at home, and the bigger things out of country he wasn't able to get away because he was the director. The radio from Silent Hill 1. This is an older game fact. It's a real radio. My red radio, the same as Harry's. It's called a Sony ICF S20. Apparently, Tsuboyama-san liked the radio and was always listening to it at work. Red radio and Silent Hill 1 was chosen because it so happened to be my radio that was there. That's funny because Tsuboyama-san joined the first game very late, which may mean that the radio itself was a late addition, or at least a midway addition, because it came with Tsuboyama-san. The red square was my idea. It wasn't written in the story. When I incorporated game elements into James's psychology and worldview, the design was born. That's interesting. So we know where the red square save file thing came from. About the project, I'll write down what I remember. Phase 1, 2 important decisions. If I hadn't made these decisions early on, I might not have been able to finish the project on time. The first point is to not add new features. It's basically based on Silent Hill 1. That decision allowed us to focus on making the most of new hardware in the unique atmosphere of Silent Hill. That makes sense, because Silent Hill 2 is basically just Silent Hill 1's bones with new characters and kind of a new setting. It's Silent Hill, but it's a different part of Silent Hill. They were reusing it to tell a new story to upgrade what they'd already done. The second point is the direction of horror. When trying to differentiate from Silent Hill 1 and explore a new direction, psychological horror was a natural choice. I thought it would be widely accepted. The basic emotions of anger, joy, sadness, anxiety, surprise, disgust, and fear are universal. That's definitely true. Phase 2, within constraints. Constraints can give a negative impression to creativity, but by using constraints to your advantage, you move in a unique direction. That's where ingenuity and ideas lie. It teaches you what's important to think about. As a psychological horror game, character portrayal and emotional expression were necessary. To cover the costs, the number of characters were limited. There are only 6 characters, including Mary. I think that basically Angela, James, Mary, Maria, Eddie, Laura. That is just 6. How do you build a game within these constraints? That's the starting point. We didn't use a specific work as our subject, but rather considered each issue. It's interesting they don't say specific work because it's been made to sound like they, if I remember right, Sato kind of implied it was like Crime and Punishment was their starting point. It's funny how everyone's memories change and are different how they remember how the game was made. Why did they come to this place? What are they fighting against? What are they fighting for? These challenges were resolved by considering how the place called Silent Hill functions as psychological horror. The protagonist's inner world is embodied under the influence of Silent Hill. Monsters and structures leading to the underground prison, easy to understand examples. So basically he's saying they worked from a standpoint of why is he here? What is he doing? What is, kind of answering those questions first. While also, it seems, watching hundreds of movies and maybe reading books as well, and pulling on different media they liked to create the story. Because it's definitely, it's a blend of Crime and Punishment, Lost Highway, Blue Velvet. Like, there's different films in there and movie experiences. The Shining, the boundary between reality and unreality is very vague. But by depicting reality clearly, the unreality can be made to feel concrete. Yeah, by making it look real in a sense, by giving a realistic element to it, the unreal takes on a quality of the real. That's why magical realism and those genres work so well, and especially in horror, you can use that to make the horror feel more real. At planning meetings, participants bring their ideas and opinions, and Owaku reflects them in the plot by the next meeting. I remember this exchange continued for several months. The framework of the story gradually took shape. That's incredible! So they were working for months on just a story framework. That's crazy. Like, nowadays, games don't get that kind of time in development at all. Just to, work on your ideas for the story for months. For a creator, the work is everything. I feel the game itself is more precise than words. It also contains ambiguity. As a creator, I intentionally leave some parts to the viewer to interpret. I hope you can feel the work and enjoy the afterglow. We can. Sir, you have created an absolute masterpiece that has influenced 2 decades of game developers, horror writers, across the planet. This is definitely a game that will last far longer than many works in the video game field do. Tsuboyama-san talks a lot more about his general feelings and ideas about making the game. He also laments the loss of David Lynch and mentions some of his works. In January, he talks about the trip to San Francisco. He remembers going to San Francisco in 1999 to cover Silent Hill 2. There was a suspicious Japanese man wandering around a residential area with a camera. That's us. Then he asked me, "What are you guys doing?" I know exactly how you feel. I guess talking about someone from San Fran saw them and were like, "What are you guys doing?" This was before Google Maps, so I mainly used photos and movies as reference. I also looked up floors in rental magazines. Movies were the most effective way to get a three-dimensional spatial understanding of a place. That's why there are a lot of familiar places in Silent Hill. And then there's an image from a movie, which I'm guessing may have influenced the bowling alley from Silent Hill 2. We got on the highway and headed for Sacramento, maybe. We ended up spending the night in a cheap motel. There was one bed missing. We made a bet on where we would sleep. The next morning, scenario writer Owaku and I woke up in the same bed. I wonder if that means Owaku-san lost and then just decided, I'm not sleeping on the floor, and once they were asleep, he got in. I don't know. And then he mentions a shooting range in San Francisco. It was so simple. Handgun and ammo were handed to me in a shopping basket. No dividers between the lanes. When I picked up the handgun, I felt a fear I cannot describe. So that is where the idea for the gun in the shopping basket came from. His own experience with how easy it was to get a weapon in America. He also mentioned some of the artwork he's done for the series. He did the cover art for Silent Hill 4, the cover art for Silent Hill 4 CD, and also one of the covers for Silent Hill 2. It's really incredible just to see this person come out and discuss all his work. He's mentioned he wants to discuss Silent Hill 4 in the future too, which is really exciting. It'll definitely be a boon to me and all the research that I do. My Silent Hill 2 making of video is already now out of date. I'll update it one day, but I thought it'd just be fun to take a more relaxed take here and just talk about it. As y'all know, I took some time off for my health. I am supposed to be having a surgery. Still hasn't happened yet. America! March 19th. Cross your fingers for me. I'll be fine. I've had surgery before. I've had anesthesia before, so I'm not worried or anything there. I'm much healthier. My anemia is, knock on wood, basically back to normal levels. The side effects I was suffering are gone because we've managed to fix some things with my medication. So this is the best I've felt in a long time. As you can tell from my hard breathing, I still don't have very good stamina as far as energy goes. So I'm still not coming back fully to making videos, to streaming, because I know that that amount of like 6-7 hours of work would just knock me flat. So I think I'm going to do some more relaxed things, just talking like this in some short videos. I'll probably focus on books for a little while. My PS4 is actually broken. I don't know. I let my niece play it, and it just, the HDMI port is now very loose, and I don't know if kids don't always know how to use things, so unfortunately I gotta figure out how to fix that. So can't play Silent Hill 2 right now, but I have some projects I'm gonna be working on, and something cool coming. Not Silent Hill or video game related, but I did something cool, and I can't say what it is yet, but I will post links and let folks know when that thing is out. My books are all available again. I've reopened the bookstore to sell things. I'm a little unsatisfied with them because I feel like they're very old now and I want to update them, but then I'm like, that's so much work. So I think I'm going to leave them as they are and work on, kind of new updated versions of things. Maybe I'll make a new book that has my feelings about Silent Hill 2 or what have you, especially now with the remake. And I'll leave the old ones because a lot of folks have asked me about them and have wanted them, and I feel bad keeping them from folks just because I'm not satisfied with the quality of them. I can always make new things, so that's what I'm gonna do. Yeah, I'm gonna try and keep everybody posted more with what I'm doing. I'm still slowly and surely trying to come back to doing things and being alive, but I'm prioritizing health because I've spent a lot of years being very ill and in a lot of pain, and I don't want to do that anymore. Don't want to do that. It's not good. I'm gonna try being on the Discord and more active there, so come find me on Discord if you want to chat or anything. I don't think I have anything else to say. So yeah. Bye!